how's it going? It's Sam Frost here, and in today's video what I want to do is share a few really simple strategies you can use to make your email marketing more effective. In the current climate of sort of crisis and uncertainty, a lot of businesses are turning back to the old-fashioned, tried and tested methods of marketing, such as email marketing. It's one of the most effective online marketing channels you have at your disposal. Consistently, email marketing comes out on top or very near the top when marketers, marketing agencies and the like are surveyed as to what channels are the most effective. There's some really good stats around that, which I'll link in the video description. So if you want to get the most out of email marketing, then keep watching, because what I'm going to do is just share some very simple tips that you can use to make your email marketing a whole lot more effective and actually get better results from it. Make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I've got heaps of free digital marketing advice that you can use to grow your business and make your online marketing and digital marketing much more effective. The first tip I've got is to make sure you only email people you actually have the permission to email and who actually want to receive your emails. So this is something I see a lot of businesses get wrong, especially business-to-business organizations. B2B companies are notorious at doing this. They'll dig up old lists of customers from years ago off their CRM system or hidden away on some Excel file on an old workstation somewhere and say, oh, this person bought a product from us once, back when George Bush was the president, so they're going to want to hear from us again now. And what you do is you go and load that list into MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or whatever platform you use, and you blast out that email campaign. And what you find is one of a few things. Firstly, you might get a really bad unsubscribe rate. So a whole lot of people saying, this isn't for me, I want to unsubscribe. You might get a huge number of bounces because those email addresses that existed back then are no longer valid. This is super important for B2B organizations especially, because what you'll find is that a lot of your list probably consists of job or work-related emails. So rather than people signing up to your list with a personal email that's more likely to stay consistent, if I think of my own personal email, I've had a personal Gmail address for years, since I was at high school. But I've had, probably half a dozen work email addresses in that time. So if I signed up to something when I was at my last job and now I'm gone and you've only just started using that email, well, what's going to happen? It's probably going to bounce, or it's at the very least going to get redirected to someone who didn't want it in the first place. So make sure you're actually emailing sort of relevant, fresh, current email addresses that have expressly given you permission to email them, especially if your list consists of a lot of business or work-related emails, because those have a greater chance of changing, especially at the moment where unfortunately a lot of businesses are closing, a lot of people are losing their jobs, and there's a lot of change out in the sort of employment space. So make sure you don't just sort of dust off the covers of an old book full of email addresses you haven't used in years and years. Most businesses get this point right, but I still see a lot of people trying to just work with email addresses that probably never gave any permission, and certainly even if they had given permission, it may have been so long ago that they're actually not really relevant or sort of interested in what you have to offer anymore anyway. Keep things current, keep things fresh. Don't worry about having the biggest possible email list. Worry about having the most relevant and the highest quality one possible. And what that's going to do is minimize the risk of big numbers of unsubscribes, of big numbers of bounces. It's going to minimize the risk that you send out a campaign and get such a bad spam complaint rate or such a bad bounce rate that your deliverability is actually negatively impacted for your future campaigns, or possibly even you wind up with your account in MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or whatever being prevented from sending emails. And I've seen this happen. I saw it happen to someone, a old client of mine, who I advised them against this, but they did it anyway. They basically took a pen drive full of email addresses from an event that an organizer they knew had given them, and without any permission loaded that pen drive into their system. It was about a few thousand email addresses, I think, sent out a campaign, and as you'd expect, they got a massive number of spam complaints, massive number of bounces, massive number of unsubscribes, and they're actually blocked from sending more emails under that account, which is not a good way to start. So make sure you are using relevant, fresh email addresses, that have been recently acquired or have been on your list for a while and have definitely given you permission to email them. That is the biggest and sort of best tip I can give you to get the most out of your emailing. Don't worry too much about having a massive list. Worry about the quality and the engagement of that list over anything else. The next email marketing tip to boost your performance is to make sure you actually take the time and effort to segment your list correctly. Now, sometimes you'll send out an email that is truly relevant to everyone in your list. But oftentimes emails will be more relevant to a portion of your list and less relevant to another portion. So for example, if we look at New Zealand where I live, there are two islands, well, two main islands. We won't count Stewart Island in this. Sorry guys if you're watching from Stewart Island. Now let's say I have an offer that really only applies to people in the South Island because I'm only willing to deliver that particular product or service within the South Island where I live. Why would I email that to someone in the North Island? I guess you could argue that actually someone in the North Island might see it and might forward it on to a friend or colleague, or they might be, traveling between islands, and so it might be relevant. But chances are it's going to be better if I just focus on emailing the people who could actually benefit from that offer. So in my email list setup, I should have, which island people live in, or at the very least, I should have which region they live in, and then I can pick all the regions that constitute the South Island, or exclude the regions that constitute the North Island, for example. So there's geographic segmentation that's really important. If you look at the United States, for example, it might be that your offer or service is only valid in one state and not the next state over, so you'd want to know what states people are in, or even down to the city level. Perhaps even more granular depending on what it is you're doing. Maybe you just operate in one city, but you know that your current service or offer that you want to push out is most relevant for people in a particular suburb or a particular area. Well, make sure you've got the ability to segment via that. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is that you can segment on more than just location. You can segment on interests, for example, products that a customer holds, or products or services they've purchased in the past. All these different things you can segment by will basically combine together to improve the performance of your email marketing, because what you can do is become more targeted. So rather than sort of taking a sort of machine gun spray approach, you instead laser focus. You take that sniper approach to your email marketing and really focus on the people who would best benefit from your offer. So think about all the different ways that you could segment your list, and it may be that you're going to have to put quite a bit of effort into not only coming up with the segmentation concepts, but also going through and applying that to your data as well. And depending on what platform you're on, depending on how your list is structured, this may be more or less easy. But you really want to put effort into doing this. I always find that businesses that take the effort to segment their lists around key geographies or key areas or regions, industries, whether the person is a prospect or a current customer or a past customer, those three at the very least, that's going to give you a great sort of bedrock, a great platform to start with when it comes to improving your email marketing. But if you can avoid it, if you can basically go through the rigmarole of setting it up, please do try to avoid just having one list that has nothing else on it apart from name and email. Obviously, that's better than nothing. If you just cannot go through the process of segmentation, or perhaps your offer is genuinely so broad that it's kind of relevant to everyone all of the time, then that's fine. That's totally better than nothing, and I'm not going to complain about that. But if you can go through the process of picking those criteria, setting them up, and then applying the segmentation, you will generally find that your email campaigns are a lot more effective and get better performance for your business. The next tip to improve your email marketing and get better performance for your business is to actually go through periodically and clean up your list. So a lot of businesses will acquire emails over a very long period of time. There's almost like an organic growth to the list. And what you'll tend to find is there'll be people who don't unsubscribe but never open your emails. They're being delivered, they're not bouncing, but they're never getting opened, but they don't unsubscribe, they don't complain that this is spam. But they basically don't want to hear from you. And you'll often find that's actually quite a big portion of your list. Now, depending on what platform you're using for your email marketing, that is going to have a couple of negative consequences. Firstly, obviously, it is simply the effect of having all these people on your list who don't open your emails because they're no longer interested or it's no longer relevant, but they haven't bothered to tell you. And so what that does is that lowers your open rate, it lowers your click rate, it could possibly affect your deliverability. The jury can be out on that there's sort of open to debate, but certainly it's not the best practice to have your list full of people who are no longer interested and no longer opening your emails. So there's that performance element, but the other element that's actually really important to consider, especially at the moment, is that that is costing you money. Now, if you're on a, platform like ActiveCampaign, for example. Now, ActiveCampaign, you pay basically based on a threshold of subscribed emails or contacts, and you might find that you could cut from, say, a 5,000 subscription plan down to a 1,000 subscription plan if you eliminated all of the emails that simply had signed up over the months, over the years, and no longer opened. Same goes with MailChimp or any platform like that. It's quite an extreme example. Obviously, if you go from 5,000 to 1,000, that means a lot of your list was really unengaged. But make sure you actually spend the time to go through periodically and clean up your list. Identify people who've received multiple emails. Perhaps people who've received every email you've sent in, say, the last 12 months and have never opened a single one of them. Those are the kind of people you really need to sit down and say, is it worth keeping this person on my list? Now, if you've got a small list, especially a list where your potential sale value is very high, so some of those specialized B2B industries, for example, you might want to manually go through and actually review each contact. You might even manually want to call them up and say, hey, you still interested? If you've got their phone details. But if you've got a large list, if you're in B2C, sort of retail, hospitality space, that kind of thing, you're probably better off just to simply use the stats that are available in MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or whatever platform you use. Basically go through and batch identify people who receive your emails but never open them, break it into different cohorts. So, someone who's signed up in the last month but hasn't opened an email, maybe they're off on holiday, maybe they've signed up with their work email, and they're stuck at home under, lockdown conditions and they can't access their work email, who knows? But if someone's been on your list for a year or 24 months or even longer and has never opened an email, they're probably never going to open your emails. They're probably never going to buy from you unless something drastic changes. And so is it worth keeping them on your list when they're artificially deflating your performance metrics and also costing you money by being subscribed to your list while adding no value? And just one quick tip, a lot of platforms like MailChimp, for example, actually have functionality built in to quickly identify basically these low value contacts. So with MailChimp, there's the star system, and you can go through and very quickly identify, for example, 1-star contacts, who are basically people who never open your emails. And unless you've got a good reason to keep them on, you want to get rid of them. What you may wish to do, though, is actually send a re-engagement campaign to that list of people saying, hey, are you still interested? And if you don't hear back from them, basically take them off the list, cut it down, focus on the quality. You'll save money on your email marketing and actually get better performance as well. Once you've tidied up your list and worked on the segmentation, another step that's going to make your email marketing more effective is to actually focus on how you're creating your emails. I've got a few tips here. One of them is to try and keep your emails as simple as possible. Now, the reason I say this is not because I don't like visually appealing emails, but often what I'll find when helping clients go through the process of improving their email marketing is that people will have templates that are a bit hacked together, a bit pieced together, utilizing perhaps too many of those drag and drop features you find in MailChimp and Campaign Monitor and ActiveCampaign and all those kinds of platforms. And they might look quite good in the editor, but when you send that email out, something will break in someone's inbox. So a tip here is to try and keep your emails as simple as you can get away with. So it might be that you have a full-width logo or header at the top, then an introductory sort of text body, then a footer at the bottom with some social links, then your unsubscribe and sort of required contact information, and you keep it really, really simple. Be wary of those sort of complex dual or triple or multi-column layouts or all sorts of different sized elements all over the place. If you're going to go down that path of having these more complex emails, make sure you test them very, very diligently. Look at even using a tool like litmus.com, which allows you to test in multiple inboxes at once. It's quite expensive, but if you're doing a lot of email marketing, especially if you want to do complex emails, this is probably going to save you a lot of hassle and a lot of headache and a lot of frustration on your customer's part when they receive an email that's broken. Now, another tip is to try and keep your email copy as short as possible. People's attention span is generally fairly poor, and in my experience, shorter emails tend to work better. So get to the point quickly. Don't have, page after page of text. Don't do war and peace in your email. Instead, keep it concise. What is the key message? What is the key action? What problem are you solving? What is the key benefit? And basically make it as easy to action and as easy to read and as easy to understand as possible. And if you want someone to read a longer version, we'll put it up on your website as a blog post or an article or something like that, and people can click through and read the full content. But most people's attention span is fairly poor. You've got to grab their attention with a snappy, catchy headline, so make sure you put effort into creating good headlines, and you may even want to look at split testing different headlines, but then make sure that your email content is nice and concise. And one more tip here is to try and minimize the use of images. Now, the reason I argue this is basically that by default, most email inboxes, most email clients won't show email images from untrusted senders. So unless someone's whitelisted you or deliberately said always show, images and emails from Sam Frost, for example, if I was sending the email, you're probably better off to try and use text where possible, because what you can find is that you could send out an entirely image-based email, and not only is that possibly going to increase the risk of a spam filter picking up your email, because it's easier to spam people with images than it is with text, because computers struggle a bit more to read text on images. Also, you might find that someone receives that email and their client opens it with all of the images blocked, and unless they choose to expressly allow those images, they're not going to see your content. But if you've got clear, concise text, then they can say, hey, this is relevant, I want to show those images. So just a few tips there to make your emails more effective. And one other thing to bear in mind as well is actually make sure that you send your recipients to the most relevant link on your website. So if you've got a specific page on your website that talks about your offer, don't just send them to the homepage, send them to a landing page that talks about that offer. If you don't have that landing page, make it. Don't just be lazy and send people to the homepage. But this is a mistake I see tons of people make. They'll put effort into building a good list, creating good emails, making them interesting, and then just send people to their homepage because that's easy. Send people to the most relevant page to your offer, to your product, to your service, send them to the page that solves their problem best. That is going to massively increase the performance of your emails. To recap, in order to make your email marketing more effective, start with the simple process of making sure you actually email people who want to hear from you. So actually make sure you get permission. Don't just dig up old leads, old emails you found, lurking in a folder somewhere on your computer that you haven't talked to in years. If you do want to go down that path, actually personally email them, or use something like Mailshake or Plenty to send a re-engagement email, but don't just load them into your MailChimp or ActiveCampaign. Focus on the people who are most recent, most relevant, most fresh. Remember that you want a quality list, not necessarily a massive list. Once you've done that, make sure you've got the ability to segment your list. Make sure you've also got the ability to segment by multiple options if possible. So not just geography, but also interest, customer status, all those kinds of things, perhaps customer pricing or sort of recognition level if you operate on that basis within your business. And from there on, what you want to be doing is making sure that your emails are structured in a way that are really appealing. So you've got to have subject lines that people want to click. You've got to have clear, concise emails that get to the point. Don't waffle. And try to avoid overly complex emails that are more likely to break in the inbox. Err on the side of simplicity. Unless you've got the ability and the nous and the know-how and kind of the time to really get this stuff right in terms of checking and testing complex email layouts, you're almost always going to be better off doing something simple, executing it diligently, and sending it to a very focused, targeted list. And then once you've got all those ducks in a row, actually make sure you get those emails out there. Don't just send one email today and then forget about it for 6 months' time. I see way too many businesses only use their email list when it comes to kind of Christmas time or end of year shutdowns. So make sure you email diligently. That doesn't mean email all the time, because that will kill your list probably, but it does mean that you should be emailing on at least a semi-regular basis. Any business should probably be emailing once a month at least, just to keep that list engaged, keep fresh content in front of them, and kind of remind people that you exist, because if you leave it too long, there's a risk that you send an email and that person's totally forgotten who you are. So I hope you find these tips helpful. I hope it helps you make your email marketing more effective. Please like this video. Please subscribe here on YouTube. If you have any comments, I would love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.